Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
We
Hey.
are live and working, and I'd like to say thank you for coming to 11's Is at Worldbuilders. It's part of our fundraiser to benefit Heifer International, which we have blown past not only our initial goal and our secondary goal, we blew past the record set last year for the second most successful fundraiser ever. So now we are the second most successful fundraiser ever for Worldbuilders. And a large part of that is due to the help of people that you see here. Especially, I want to give a shout out to Vita, because before we did any of these panels, Vita came in and consulted with us, and we said, how did you make that magic happen at Fiacon Fringe? And she laid some wisdom down for us, and we followed it. And where we got it right, it's due to her. And where we got it wrong, it's mainly due to me. And in fact, there's a parable about us. The reason we're late today is because we had some sound connection difficulties, which I thought was because Vita's on one side of the world and Ogunashova is on another side of the world, and SL Wong is in Milwaukee. And we thought, hey, this is going to be really scary. What's going on?
Actually,
It
I'm not
turned
in
out
this
the
world.
problem. What was it?
I say, actually, I'm not in this world. That's an
Oh.
assumption.
I thought the connection difficulties were because of the distance, but it turned out it was my headphones, which the lesson should be learned is sometimes the problem is in your own head. But meanwhile, I'm going to just thank everyone for showing up. I especially want to thank SL for being willing to moderate this panel, because I can then disappear and I'm not even going to be the geek in the van. Today, the geek in the van is Jamie. Thank you for stepping in at the last second. And with that, SL, I'll let you go ahead in and let people introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody, and good morning or afternoon or evening or night, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to our panel on weird, wild, bumpy career paths, as we're all writers, but we got here in all different ways. I'm very, very excited to be joined by our panelists today. I'm going to go ahead and ask them to introduce themselves to you as writers first, before we get into all the other stuff we're here to talk about. So go ahead. I'll pick somebody if nobody wants to jump in, but if somebody wants to jump in, go right ahead. All right, Vita, go ahead.
Okay then. Hi, I'm Vida Cruz. I'm a Filipina living in the Philippines. My fiction is on Strange Horizons, Podcastle, various anthologies. How do you put this? I don't think I am skilled for much else other than writing, but this year I accidentally found myself as a con runner. So,
Well, that's right, too.
Well, we appreciate all of your work, both as a writer and con writer in the community. And Ogunashova, tell us about yourself.
Okay. My name is Ogenechowe Donald Ekpeki. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, I'm a speculative fiction writer, slush reader, editor, publisher, and yeah, I've won a couple awards, been longlisted, shortlisted, and yeah, that's me.
Awesome.
Uh, yeah,
Go ahead.
my full-time job is applying for grants. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. Well, I'm very glad to have both of you here. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm SL Huang. I'm a writer as well. I'm the author of the Cass Russell series and the fantasy Burning Roses, and also have worked in movies for a really long time. So I have some idea about different careers and unexpected, how they can be unexpected. But I'm going to not talk too much about myself today, but rather about our panelists. And I want to let everybody in the audience know I have the stream open next to the video Zoom call. So and I would love to take questions as we go rather than at the end. So if you have questions for our panelists as they talk about their other careers, go ahead and throw them into the chat, and I will try to work those into our conversation as we talk, and we'll just have a nice conversation. So first of all, I just want to start by asking you both, what careers have you had other than writing, and or what career path brought you here over the years? Anything you sort of want to mention to give us an idea of where we'll be going. And why don't we start with you, Ogenechove? Is he frozen for anybody else or just me?
Rose.
Oh no! All right. While we wait for him to get back into the chat, why don't you go ahead, Vita, and tell us what brought you here?
Okay. This is gonna sound really bad, but I graduated from college 7 years ago, and I have had 7 jobs since then.
That doesn't sound bad. That sounds exciting. Go ahead.
The longest I stayed at a job is 2 years and 7 months, and then well, let's see. I've been a journalist, a technical writer, curriculum designer, podcast coordinator, book editor, and bid manager. And there was a little blip in between the curriculum design where I stayed 2.7 years. And then because I won Writers of the Future, and there was a problem with my job where they couldn't let me go on leave for that long because I wanted to go around the US for a month after the contest. And I was going to file for a special leave, but some very pressing health circumstances dictated that I resign from that job anyway. And then after that, the jobs I've had have been in increasingly shorter periods, as in months.
You know, I found sometimes, like, as writers, right? Sometimes shorter or gig jobs end up working around the writing career better. And I totally know what you mean about health circumstances too. That's happened to me. You know, just in case we lost Ogenechove, I don't know if he'll be able to get back in. I will step in as another panelist in addition to moderator, so we can have a conversation. And if he gets back, if his technology is solved and he can get back to us, I'll step back again. I am also a stunt woman and firearms expert for movies and television. And I was doing that for quite a long time before, actually, what you said, Vita, touched me a lot because I also had some bad health problems that I had to take a break from that and ended up sort of falling into writing. And now I'm trying to do both, but then, you know, the pandemic happened, which has affected all of our lives so marvelously. So anyway, that's where I'm coming out of. And we're already getting some questions in the chat, which is great. So anyway, let's dive in. Vita, I want to encourage at any point, if you have a good story, I really encourage like stories about like prior careers. So go ahead and throw in, you know, as you're talking, go ahead and tell us tales. So the first question we have from one of our audience members is, what's the most surprising skill that has transferred from another job to your writing career?
I suppose that would be people wrangling. If you look at my CV, it's all been writing or editing. But when you work in an office, you have to work with a team, and you kind of have to coordinate anyway. And while this isn't exactly writing, it did help with community stuff because the people wrangling that I learned from various jobs that you wouldn't think taught you people wrangling came into play when Iori Kusano and I arranged FireCon Fringe earlier this year. And just to give an example, when I say I was a curriculum designer, I used to do that for an ESL company, and then the company's goal was to teach English to Chinese learners. In the beginning, it was for adults, but then they suddenly shifted to an 80% child market, which is very difficult to write for the child market. And if you don't have proper scaffolding, which the Chinese team and the Philippine team could not agree on, things will go to hell. For example, our director wanted us. Oh, you're back.
Yay!
Yeah. Sorry, my I think my network went crazy.
No
All right.
worries. No worries. Go
All
ahead,
right.
Vita.
Yeah.
All right. So, for example, our boss wanted us to come up with storybooks of different levels of complexity for children. And then we hired a lot of graphic designers to do illustrations. They're adorable, okay? But we also had a side project where we would do a series of connected stories in one town with recurring characters. And my team worked on that for what I think is 5 months. Like we'd meet every so often and then we'd do storyboarding. I even came up with a, what do you call that? I forgot. It's that chart where you chart the relationships of different characters to each other. It was a grid. And I think they use that in comics. Anyway, I used that. And we also had to come up with different topics for different books. And then at the end of these 5 months, present them to our boss. And then she says, this isn't what I asked for. What? And then at the meeting, I could feel everybody getting super angry. And then our boss asked, but what is blah and blah and blah? And then finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, ma'am, what exactly do you mean by blah blah? And then that stunned her. That stunned the rest of the room. And well, you know what? We had to scrap that project, but that was probably how I learned to wrangle people and uh, be braver with questions.
Wow. Yeah, I know what you mean about like personalities and stuff. Writing isn't quite as bad as Hollywood, but yeah, that's a really, really useful skill. And what a story. All right, Oganachomi, I'm so glad you made it back. Yay. Why don't we start by give us a rundown of your career path that brought you to writing and just the different places you've been so we know where the conversation is heading. And then the first question we had from the audience was, what is the most surprising skill that transferred from one of your other jobs to your writing career, or vice versa? And I was telling Vita, I encourage telling of any interesting stories from your other jobs because I think that's exactly what we're here for. So go ahead, give us the rundown, and then you can take the question. And if you forget what it is, just let me know. And yeah.
Okay. Well, I haven't exactly had a whole lot of jobs separate from writing. Because I don't know. Growing up, I was the indoors kind of kid. You know, when everybody was going around playing football, it was like, oh, go inside and read. So, yeah, I was always the reading guy. I mean, so it's not surprising I ended up as a slush reader. So I basically ended up doing a bunch of jobs around writing. I studied mass comm up to a point because I wanted to write, journalism, focusing on print. But I left that because the school had some issues, not me. So I left and I started studying law, you know. And yeah, I studied law in the University of Lagos, but the most use I got from it was swapping case stories and trying to make fiction out of them. So yeah. But that would only really work for me if I was a crime writer. So, but I'm into science fiction fantasy instead. So yeah. I did a bunch of other things. I tried to do a talk show. Yeah. I had
Wait,
a
don't
record.
blow past that. You tried to do a talk show?
Yeah, but it was yeah, it didn't work out. It was too ambitious.
Uh,
So yeah.
I do admire
Yeah,
your
then
ambition, though.
Same.
yeah. Although I'm not sure if okay, let me not go into that because it diverges a bit into Nigerian politics. Because the talk show was supposed to involve our president.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Gotcha.
And the
Well,
man isn't very the man isn't very literate, not to be rude. So yeah. Um yeah, what was that? Yeah, I was talking about I had a record label. So yeah, I had artists. Yeah, so we're making music, putting music out. I mean, I wasn't really a music guy. You know, I was sort of like the what's the name? This guy that does cameos a lot. Um, why can't I remember his name? The
It's always
Marvel
when you're on the
guy.
spot, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
Stanley.
yeah, Stanley. I was sort of the musical Stanley. You know, I just did cameos in the songs. You know, just said a few lines. You know, so jump around a bit. You know, so yeah. But eventually, I circled back to writing because it's what I really want to do, and I feel like why waste my time? You know, people always say this thing about, oh, you need a day job, you can't do writing, you know. But if it's really what you want to do, you know, why not? Why waste your time doing all other things that you don't really care about just so that you can do the things that you want? I mean, life is so short. You only have how long, you know? So I believe you should just find a way to, you know, make what you want possible, you know. And yeah, which is why earlier at the beginning I said my full-time job is applying for grants. You know they say a writer has to have a day job, you know. So yeah, I guess, yeah. I just want to
Wow.
make sure yeah, I do what I want.
That is quite the career path, and very admirable, your attitude about going for what we want because life's too short. Yeah, very cool. All right, we have so many good questions coming in. I prepared questions, but I think the audience ones are better, and it's what people want to know about. So yeah, I'm gonna pull a few more from the chat. So here's a question we have. I'd be interested to know if either of you ever reached a point where things felt they were hopeless and you thought, well, I'll never make it, and you were wrong. How do you make it past that point if it ever happened in your winding career path?
Do you want to go first again, Chopper, or shall I?
Well, I occasionally jump into conclusions, so let me jump into this one. um I think I've already been there. I've already done that, you know. I started writing at a very early age, you know, but then I stopped for like a decade, for a long time, because there wasn't really any avenue to publish. You know, there wasn't really any way, you know, back in the days before the internet, before literary magazines, you know, you literally had to mail your work, you know, to publishers, big publishers, like, you know, all the way across the world, you know. I mean, Nigeria, for example, if I wanted to be published in, say, F and SF, I literally had to mail my work across, you know, continents. So, you know, it was either that or uh try to get big publishers and agents, which was also, you know, so it wasn't really feasible. So I've already been at that hopeless place, you know. But recently with the internet, you know, everything just sort of, the world is sort of compressed, you know, like a global village. You know, you have access, you can reach people, you can talk to people, you know, stuff like that. So um and for me now, I've realized, I guess I had a different mindset then, you know, because even then, even without the internet, it wasn't exactly impossible. It was just difficult, you know. So, and I've realized now, you know, once you have sort of like a head start, it's easier to keep running, even when the terrain is rocky. So, with that start now, even if we were to get to a point where, you know, things were at that bad place again, I think I would find a way. I would adapt. I would try to keep running, however difficult the terrain was. I mean, I don't anticipate the world losing internet, except of course maybe there's an apocalypse or some dark lord returns. But whatever the case may be, you know, I think that you can find a way. I mean, even if it means mailing your work, across the world. So yeah, I think you
I,
just adapt and improvise.
that's amazing. I want that on like a plaque or something, like when you have a head start to just keep running, because I feel like I need to remember that myself. So how about you,
Beautiful.
Vita? Anytime things felt more hopeless and you were able to get past it?
Okay, so my colorful career in corporate happened to coincide with mental health issues. And I recently confirmed that it was being in corporate that was causing the mental health issue. Uh, and I, again, Chava said earlier that you're told that as a writer, you need a day job and all that in order to support your hobby. And I was told that too. And when I was graduating college and entering the workforce, and in the Philippines, it is not feasible to live as a writer because, let's see, you would be lucky to be paid $5 for a story that was published. So that I've been setting my sights on venues abroad ever since I found out that they existed. Um, and the thing is, I I feel like I've been running away from writing. I've been I've been nurturing it as a side career these last 7 years because I felt that it was more important to have a day job and security. And I couldn't see that being in a regular job was costing me my health and my happiness because I live at the edge of the city also, and all the jobs are down south center of Manila. And the earliest I've had to wake up for any job was 3 a.m. And then the commute to work would take 2 to 3 hours. It came to the point where I tried to rent an apartment, even though I took a publishing job as a book editor. And that the salary of that book editing job meant that I would take a pay cut that was pretty steep. But it didn't matter to me because I wanted to work in publishing. Um, it turned out that the apartment I moved into was haunted. And yeah, like
Whoa.
yeah. So I could go to work without rushing, but also I had a nosebleed every day for the month that I lived there, and I also had fevers and terrible dreams, and just awful. It was awful, and the things that I was willing to put myself through to make a regular paying job work, right? And then the last job I had before this pandemic struck, I worked at a call center, and the money was better than ever, but the schedule was terrible. It was even worse than the publishing job. Um, and I got let go unjustly. I even filed a case with our labor department because I had proof that it was unjust. But I couldn't pursue that case because money. I'm a full-time freelancer now, and um, I edit manuscripts with the Darling Axe. Uh, how do you put this? So even though this pandemic has been, and this year in general has been pretty bad for everyone, I don't know. The moment that I let go of my corporate work, suddenly the writing career that I'd been nurturing on the side was blooming, and all these opportunities were happening, probably because we were all stuck at home and then everything was accessible. Suddenly I've been to more cons than I've ever been to before, and people ask me to do things for them that are really cool, and like this panel right here. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't know if you believe in the universe or karma or whatever, but if you keep running away from what it wants you to be, then you are denying your own happiness, and in my case, your own health. really. So I guess I have been to hell and back with my careers. And all I can say is that probably you're going to have a very honest conversation with yourself about what you think you're meant to do, what you know you're meant to do. And probably there is probably no better time to jump into it than now because we have so much free time on our hands.
Wow, that's a really impressive journey, and congratulations on your writing career taking off. That's awesome. I feel like both of you have really what your stories are driving home, how important it is too for writing to be something accessible, where markets are accessible from people all over, geographically all over the world, and how it does take thought and care to do that. And I'm incredibly glad that that's becoming something that is more possible, and that people are starting to think of that as a something that we should prioritize, because we absolutely should. Vita, real quick, there's a lot of interest in chat about your haunted apartment, and people want to hear more about it. Did you ever find out what haunted it?
I think I'll join the crowd because I have questions too.
Okay, so I don't want this whole panel to be about that haunted apartment. But very quickly, it turned out to be an honest to God demon. Yes, like the one of my final. Oh my God! It was Halloween last year, and I went to bed and I wasn't feeling great. Don't know why. And then I had an awful nightmare where this big shadow with beady white eyes was standing at my bed, and it was pretending to be my godmother who had passed away 10 years ago, and it was trying to throw me off the bed and telling me, you are unclean, you are unworthy, you've sinned. And then I woke up from the dream, my nose was bleeding and I had a fever, and I didn't go to work the next day. My mother came over and then she threw holy water all over this apartment, but that didn't work because the plumbing would turn on by itself, and things broke down like the refrigerator. And my boyfriend and we would both go together to take out the trash on the floor below, and we both had really bad feelings. And then if you know how in countries that believe in how the number 13 is bad luck, so they don't advertise 13 on the building. And we were counting. My whole family believes you were probably on the 13th floor, and that was probably true. I mean, I don't really believe in that sort of thing, but and then toward the end of my stay, I didn't even make it to a month. I was probably there for over 3 weeks. I was video chatting with a friend who was in London, and I was in my room here in this house. And then suddenly she stops talking to me and tells me, "What's that blob behind you?" I'm like, "Blob? What are you talking about?" Ha ha ha. And then she confessed to me 3 days later, after I decided to move out, that, to be honest, the blob, it was a black shadow. And I just didn't, I had to end our call right there because I was freaked out. And also my final week at that apartment, I ended up at the ER because I had a nosebleed at 4 in the morning and I fainted, and we couldn't get it was crazy. It's a crazy time. And I feel like the apartment was also a sign that, yeah, you can't stay at this job. No.
Wow, I'm really glad you got out of there, and I hope that at the very least that gives you some fodder for horror writing. But what the things you experienced?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even gonna. It's a long story, but after the apartment, stuff continued to happen, so we had to call in what is a version of a local witch doctor, faith healer.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing all that with us. And people in chat are really interested and sympathetic and saying it's really freaky. Okay, Nchome, we have a question for you, which is, as a slush reader, what's the craziest thing you've ever seen in slush?
I don't know. Like, the slush is a very interesting place. Yeah, you get a lot of
I
experiences.
agree.
First of all, it's very humbling. You know, I believe that every writer should slush read at some point in their career. It gives you a healthy understanding of how the industry works. It gives you a very good dose of humility, because it lets you know that as a writer you're really not special. Whatever it is you think you have, your strengths, character building, humor, language, you're going to see a couple hundred of it on the slush every week. So, and it also helps you balance your expectations of how writing is going to turn out. I tell people this: writing really, I know this really isn't the writing panel, but writing really is kind of similar to the lottery. It's really not just about merit. There's a lot of luck and chance that goes with it. And no, I mean, I'm sure all the good people are going to get published, or all the people that get published largely are good. But you see, there's a whole lot more people that are good, that are great, than there are spaces to be published. So a lot of great people are also not going to be published. So it really doesn't pay to get angry at an editor or a publisher, saying your work was great and you weren't published, because that's not the point. That really isn't the point. You know, so yeah, that's I mean, also occasionally you get the random angry writer that emails you, or looks for you on social media and messages you to say, oh, how dare you reject my awesome story, you yeah, stuff like that. So yeah, but it's also a very educational experience. You learn a lot, and you have the chance to read free stories, so there's that too.
That's really cool. Thank you. Okay, I think I people have been posting questions in the chat. I think I have gone through everybody who's posted a question there. I've been trying to keep track. So I'll go back to my questions, and if people have more questions, keep on posting them. This is such an interesting conversation, and I'm learning a lot and really enjoying it also. All right, so I'm looking at it. I feel like we've actually hit just in the conversation a lot of the stuff that I was going to ask about. Here's something that I'm curious about. What do you find is one of the biggest misconceptions people have about something that you have, a job that you've done? So for example, when people hear I've worked in Hollywood, they always think it's very glamorous, which is not true at all. Do you find that people completely misunderstand, or even about writing also, as that's one of your careers, that people completely misunderstand something that stands out to you?
Yeah, it's my journalism job, which is probably one of my most favorite jobs ever. Everything they say about journalists these days, like how could you write something this stupid, or like you should be ashamed to have this on your website. I've gotten all of that, but you see, what you don't know is that an editor has been through this article with a fine-tooth comb. So it's quite possible that something you wrote was not actually something you wrote, but the editor. But it's your byline. So uh, it hurts. I have so many stories about that.
Oh,
Both like um, this sucks. How could you write this? And also, this is so beautiful. It made me cry. And then with that so beautiful it made me cry thing, it was like a kind of a eulogy feature article for a couple of years ago. There was this bus crash full of artists from our scene, and like six of them died. It was terrible, and my boss tasked me to write an article about them. So I spent an entire Saturday interviewing friends and family members and talking to the hospital, talking to God knows whoever. And then um, my editor friend went through it, and I was like, okay, sure, fine. And then later on, it turns out the editor in chief himself opened it from his house, went through it, wrote new paragraphs, moved things around. And then on Twitter, I see people going, oh, this paragraph made me cry. And they'll be like, but I didn't write that paragraph. Ah!
wow. Yeah, that's something I never really would have thought of, reading journalism. And I can definitely see that. How about you, Ogenechobe? Misconceptions people have about, something that you've been involved in?
Well, it's yeah, writing. Funny enough, people have a lot of misconceptions about writing, especially science fiction fantasy. This is where my story sort of diverges with Vida's. People have these very superstitious beliefs around fantasy. They believe it makes you occultic or demonic or possessed, because it's magic. And people tend to take it a bit literally. For example, I was practically expelled from high school for reading Stephen King's The Talisman. Yeah.
Wow.
The teacher, yeah, then she was a counselor. She saw the book in front of me and she looked at the title, The Talisman. What? So you're reading about how to use talismans to harm people and stuff like that. And I guess I kind of told her that let's leave that. I didn't think she was too bright to see it that way. It wasn't literal, so which led to a cascade of punishment and stuff. And yeah, so I mean, I've had um my copy of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. I've had it burnt in front of
What?
me, like someone poured fuel on it and set
Oh
it
my God.
ablaze while I watched.
Oh my
Yeah, I
God.
was
Oh my God.
yeah,
I hope you've gotten a
I
new
was
copy
pretty
since.
young.
Wow.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, and even now, even now, some people find it hard to tell me congrats when I get an award or something because they're like, oh, you're doing that dark thing, that occultic thing. You're writing about magic
Oh, I'm
you know,
sorry.
and if you try to explain that it's not literal and they are being a bit thick, you're going to come off as rude. So yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I'm
yeah,
so sorry. You're getting a lot of
yeah.
sympathy in the chat, by the way. People are really upset about your books getting burned, and hope that you're able to get new copies and stuff. And I'm really
Yeah.
sorry that you have to deal with that. How about here's another question that I had that I'm very interested in. I know in movies sometimes we deal with very uh, interesting and sometimes difficult personalities where that like wouldn't fly in like an office job necessarily. And I'm wondering, have you what do you have any stories that you can share about very interesting personalities you've encountered in your jobs, or sort of a thing that you had to deal with on a human level that would surprise people who haven't worked where you've worked? And Ogenechobe, why don't we start with you this time? Oh, did we lose him again?
Um, he froze.
Oh
Oh
no.
no.
All right. Shoot. All right. We may or may not get him back before the end. I hope we do. But oh, do we have you back?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. We
Yes.
got you. All right. Did you
Okay.
did you hear my question? Or I'm not sure when we lost you.
Oh yeah, I did. I heard the question.
Okay. Do you have stories about any personalities you've worked with or that are like interesting and that are unexpected?
Well, not in a good way.
Oh no. Well, that is okay too, unless you don't want to share. Don't feel pressured.
Okay. Well, I worked while I was in college, actually, my undergraduate. I worked for a media company as a content creator. So we basically wrote articles for them, to publish articles about everything. I mean, this really isn't an unusual story. It's more like the everyday, super capitalist boss that wants to, use you up. So yeah, in this company, they wanted us to write 5 articles every day.
That
Yeah, five.
sounds like a lot.
It's
It's a
an
lot.
incredible lot. You know, it's like it takes all your time. You're thinking about, even if you manage to finish the 5 in that day, you're thinking, okay, maybe I should just try and do a few more and stack them up so I won't have to do as much the next day. Even when you're not writing, you're thinking about what you're going to write next. You're like, it was so draining. And the funny thing was, yeah, the amount we're being paid. Let me try and convert the amount to a rate you guys would understand. It was like um it was like I can't my maths my maths
That's
is
okay.
bad.
Don't worry about it.
It's okay. It's okay.
But yeah,
I've lived
but
in other countries. I understand.
yeah, the amount was terrible. And what was even more terrible is that the guy who had the company was a minister in my country. So
Oh,
I think he could
Wow.
definitely afford to pay more. So yeah. And when I left the job, I eventually heard he bought a Rolls Royce. And I was like, huh? Like, people are terrible. So yeah,
Yeah.
because rich
yeah,
people.
yeah. And I was working at the job, and I remember one of the news items I carried, one of the news yeah, one of the stuff I reported was about the Nomo Award, which someone won. Nomo Award is the biggest award for speculative fiction on the continent. I remember writing about someone winning it. I think it was Nady or so, in Nigeria. And I left. I won the award too. I left to focus on my own writing. My first pro short story I wrote won the award, and I remember reading an article from that same site about me winning it, probably written by some other, you know,
Oh my
someone
gosh.
else. Yeah, so it was sort of like deja vu, but we
Yeah.
switch positions. So I guess,
Wow.
yeah, that's
Well,
life.
well, congratulations on having the last laugh. It sounds like
Yeah.
Yeah,
that. And
thanks.
if anybody in the audience is not familiar with the Nobel Awards, I really recommend looking them up. I've read some incredible fiction by looking through the finalists and award winners, and yeah, really, really recommended. Before we get to Vito with this question, I just want to give a heads up to our audience that we are starting to get towards the end of the hour. So if you have any more last questions, throw them in chat and we'll try, and then we'll wrap up by the end of the hour. So how about you, Vita? Any personalities that you worked with that stand out?
Oh my God. Okay. So I've got three stories for you. What I didn't mention was that I used to slush read for Uncanny magazine from 2014 to 2017, and I got this very colorful email, and I will not name the writer, although he is quite infamous in on the internet, the whole internet. And I will not name him in case I accidentally summon him and make my own life hell after that. But so he sent this email, and you know how people embed images in the email instead of attaching them? Yeah, so it was a very big image. It got blurred and stretched out, and the font was Comic Sans in navy blue, and he detailed his entire publishing history, including the parts where people stole my work, someone kicked me out of this and that. Anyway, I really hope that you all like my story and publish it. And can I just say thank you to Lynn and Michael Thomas for having a policy of we we all have templates for the rejections where it does not invite questions. And if you end up asking questions, that's on you. So I I'm sorry to say that I did not read the story because at the cover letter level, if it's like this, then what is the document like, you know? So I sent him the template rejection, and I thought that was the end of that. But then he replied, and then I was really nervous, and because I actually googled this guy, and it turns out he has a history of harassing people who disagree with him. So I'm like, will I be in trouble if I don't reply to him? Hopefully not, because he was asking, he was like, thank you for your kind rejection. May I know, like, what you found wrong with the story? And yeah, so there. That's probably the most colorful thing I've gotten from
I think maybe
Uncanny.
you should have replied
Anyway,
saying you may not know.
okay. Um, I also, when I was a book editor at a publishing house here in the Philippines, um, I don't know why, but the publishing house likes to baby their authors. They they kind of encourage diva behavior. So there was this author who's who had gone through no less than three editors at this point because my position at the time kept getting vacated. Um, and she was apparently difficult to work with. And the project had been going on for 8 months by the time I came in. And everyone had warned me that she was difficult to work with. Case in point, I would go to her house several times a week to oversee her edits. And because it turns out that because she's a politician here, and it turned out that she had a previous assistant who gave the wrong file to the publishing house, and that's the file that we'd been working with for those 8 months. And then she looks over the printed stuff because she prefers everything printed out, and she's like, this is not the version that I wanted. And so she would go through all of this with a pencil, and then I would sort it out manually. And I don't know, but despite, even though people told me she was difficult, and I mean, I can see why you would think that, she was really nice to me. And then she would always bring out food for afternoon snack or dinner, and then she'd offer me a bunch of things to snack on too. And I don't know, we got along pretty well, and the book came out earlier this year, and like, I'm really happy for her. And it was an important story to tell anyway. It was about when some soldiers here decided to go on a surprise ambush with some terrorists, and then it turned out terribly. And she had the most info on the whole thing because she is considered mother of the police force here. And okay, last story. This one isn't that funny. In my journalism job, one of the things that forced me to leave it was I got harassed by an editor sexually,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
I filed a complaint, and I didn't realize that that's a really brave thing to do, and not everyone does that for the reasons that everyone outlines when they file for sexual harassment. Because even though it was very clear that he did something wrong, and I had proof, I had a lot of proof, the management were all his friends, and they proceeded to drag my reputation through the mud. They even dragged in my slushing for Uncanny as side jobs that are in conflict with journalism, even though I wasn't getting paid for the Uncanny thing. And it came to the point where the managing editor waited until it was my immediate boss's off day, and then she called me into her office and proceeded to blackmail me. I still have the recording in my uh, files. So that's another thing I learned from journalism, which is receipts always. I went into that room with the recording app on my phone turned on, and I put it in my pocket, and I recorded the entire conversation. And yeah, you can't use it in court, but when someone in power asked me to file a report on what happened, I had the playback and I was transcribing what happened in the report.
Oh
So
my gosh. Wow.
yeah.
I'm that's really upsetting to hear that whole story. And I'm super impressed with you and how you handled it. Like I've been sexually harassed also, and I did not handle it nearly as well. And like, wow, that's good for you. And I'm so sorry you had to deal with all that. Wow, so this has been an incredible conversation, both of you. I feel like I have been fascinated by both your lives, and it's been my privilege to be able to chat with you about it. Before we head out, I want to remind everybody that we are in the middle of this incredible fundraiser, and we are already over $800,000 raised, which is amazing. And thank you, everybody. And if you look at the chat, there are links being posted for the fundraiser, and you can go and click and make a donation. And I think there are over $850,000 I'm seeing, and we can reach our stretch goals. I think there are lots of like prizes and drawings and stuff too that you can enter by donating. And before we head out, I just want to I want to thank our amazing panelists. And if you could tell people where to find you online so they can go and follow you on the social medias, give that shout out to our audience.
Again, Chava, you first.
Okay, yeah, me. Well, you can find me on my website at ekpeki.com, ekpeki.com. I'm also on Twitter at penprince underscore pen pen then prince underscore. So yeah, that's me.
And how about you, Vida?
Okay, my website is vidacruz.org, and you can find me on Twitter as La Vie C'est Moi, which is the French version of my name. And if you follow me there, you can yell at me to try and finish my novel, or else finally write that lesbian pirate story I've been meaning to write.
Oh my
Please yell at me to do that.
Lesbian pirate story. I want that. Please write it. All right. And I'm SL Huang, and you can also find me on Twitter at SL_HUANG. And you can also find my website at slhuang.com. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. You've been an incredible audience, and I could see how excited you were about our panelists. So it was lovely talking to everybody in the audience, and especially amazing talking to both of you on this panel. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, too. It was great to have you all.
Yeah.
I think Jamie is going to take us out.
We all
No
fly
worries.
Oops.
No worries. I was like, oh, we lost our host. Hi, Jamie. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.